Welcome Post Fam and people who are about to become Post Fam. You guys asked for it. A lot. So, walk away bass tutorial. Let's do it.
If you could just walk away, yeah, I wouldn't even have to say it.
Alright guys, so this is the project right here for Walk Away. So this is the part of the song we're working with here.
Let me go. If you could just walk away, yeah, I wouldn't even have to say it.
Alright, so this is the bass section here. Basically we have 2 layers of Serum bass that I made, and then we have a sub bass that's separate and then a pad that's separate as well. And all these sounds work together to make the main sound of this drop. So I want to first take you through what these bass sounds are through Serum. So we have 2 Serum basses. One of them is more wide and one of them is more mono. And they're both kind of complementing each other to make this bass sound really cool. So first layer here is called hollow bass. So this is what it sounds like. This is the only sound that I used that was working off a preset existing. And it actually, I think, comes with Serum. It's like this first one right here. And it's just a really basic sound. I'm gonna turn off all the effects and everything. So with this wave changer thing, it can go from like a sine wave to, or like a double sine wave, I guess, to like square to saw. And so it's like kind of in the middle here. And the unison is up to 6. It's detuned quite a bit to give it that like housey kind of sound, I guess. And then we have this German LP, which is in the misc section. Just having this envelope dragged over onto this one. It's going up just a little bit, not too much. And then we have the resonance up a little bit, which just makes it even more housey, I guess. And that's honestly really all the sound is. It's extremely basic. The envelope just has like kind of a decent sized decay. And that's that sound. And now the second sound here is one that I made from scratch, and it sounds like this. So let's deconstruct this one. Let me turn off all the effects. So we just start off with this sound, which is like a really thick, sounds like a mixture between a sine and a saw wave. I'm not really sure where I found this, but it just sounds really cool by itself. And it's just a single, there's no unison or anything. And then the same technique here with the filter. The attack, there's like kind of a tiny attack and then similar decay. And this one goes a little bit higher with the cutoff. And then the resonance is what makes it sound more like traditionally housey sounding. And then on top of that, I have this noise that's called Snap 1. I think it probably just comes with Serum. And it's just a little tick noise. And so mixed with this, it's just has a nice attack to it, and it's just a really cool sound. And then I threw the hyper on here to make it a little bit more detuned and make it a little more wide. If you're listening with headphones, you can tell really easily. And then this is kind of like an OTT. It's basically OTT. And when you mess with the threshold, it makes it more and more intense. So I just had it about right here. And then a little bit of distortion, which isn't doing a whole lot, but just makes it a little bit more gritty. And then we have a little bit of a high pass. And that's all this sound is. So mixing wise, I have these 2 playing at the same time. As you can see, they're both routed to the same channel here. Basically what you do is they're normally routed to the master, but you like unclick it and then you click it here. And so these 2 are both routed to the same channel. They both have their own, a couple individual effects, like just a little bit of subtle EQ and OTT. And then the other sound has the distortion on it, just a little bit. And then they're both routed to this house channel. The wider one has some like widening on it from the FL Studio mixer. The kind of idea was to mix these 2 together and have this one be more the attack and like the middle sound, like the more mono sound. And then the other one is like to make it wider and more full. Both of these together, I added some EQ and I took out a little bit of bass and mids and then some OTT as normal. And then another EQ just with really subtle stuff. And so as you can hear with these sounds, there's like no really bass frequencies. And that's because I wanted to have a separate sub playing the same notes. That way I can control the way that the sub sounds and like how much bass, like the actual frequencies of bass I want in the mix, which is really important if you want to have a really tight mix. But before we go into the bass, I want to show you this pad layer that I have going on that's playing at the same time as the bass. And so that kind of just adds some more chord sounding flavor to this bass and makes it just a little bit more interesting and more full sounding. So this is also a Serum patch that I made. It's working off a patch that I made for my Love Yourself remix a couple years ago. And it's very simple. It's actually a lot similar to the way that I made the bass sounds. It's just the difference is I'm using it as a chord instead. So I just have these saw waves with a little bit of unison on each one and a little bit of detune. And so by themselves, they sound like this. And then when you throw the same technique of low pass on here, where it kind of goes down with the envelope and throw some resonance on there, now it sounds like this. And then with these effects here, it's really similar from the last sound I showed you, just a little bit of widening with the hyper, and then a little bit more aggressive distortion because I wanted it to sound like kind of gritty and cool. You might recognize it. It sounds really similar to my Chainsmokers remix, the pad that I made. So I wanted to go for that kind of sound. And then just a tiny bit of a phaser and chorus on there. And then kind of like what I classically do with my sounds is just like a bunch of EQ, some more distortion to give it more a gritty sound with Trash 2 a little bit. I think it's a little bit subtle with Trash 2. And then more EQ, OTT, EQ again, and then a little bit of multiband. All this stuff is just mixing stuff that's just doing subtle things that kind of just make the sound more professional, I guess. So yeah, all of those together make the bass pop a little bit more and make it more, it just kind of fills out the track a little bit more. A lot of times when you have a really simple part, when you do a bunch of layers on it, it makes the one part sound great, and then you don't need to fill it with a bunch of different elements. That's why this drop is like super simple. Yeah, and so I basically have this pad doing a really simple rhythm. Dum, 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 dum. Then the bass is a little bit more complicated and I have some extra notes going. Boom, 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 boom. So yeah, as you're hearing so far in this song, the sounds aren't that complicated or crazy or anything, but it's super important that when you're making a song, the whole vibe of the song and like the actual chords and the feel and everything is there. And then you can get away with some really simple stuff and it just really complements the track. And so I didn't have to like go crazy with sound design or anything. I just kind of mixed a couple sounds together to make something simple and easy to grab onto. So the last piece of this bass puzzle is the sub. When you separate the sub from the actual like tonal bass of the sound, you're able to customize it more and make it like super thick and just get a little bit more experimental with the bass. I know a lot of people just use a simple sine wave as sub. I like to go a little bit more complicated than that and mess around with harmonics and more effects on it to make it really thick. So if you're watching this part, you might want to be listening on good speakers or headphones, otherwise you won't really be able to hear what I'm doing. But this is a preset I made on Massive. I'll kind of deconstruct it for you real quick. So first off, I have this sine mixed with square wave. So when you move it all the way to the right, it's a square. And when you move it to the left, it's a sine. And so I have that kind of in the middle here. And also you can see there's a wave shaper here, which adds a little bit of distortion. Basically, a sine wave is just the fundamental sub frequency, and you can see it on this little graph here. It's like this little peak right here is the fundamental. And if I didn't have any other harmonics on there, it would just be a really simple sub wave. But when I add the square and I add the distortion, it adds more harmonics on the sound, which makes it more thick and more interesting. And then I threw this band reject filter on it and I had it like at these settings right here, which cuts off a lot of those harmonics, but keeps a couple of them in the like lower register. And now this sub has more character to it. Another cool thing I did is I put a envelope on the pitch. And so it's like a really fast attack or decay. So when you have the decay longer, you can tell it's going, ew. When it's really short, it just gives it more of an attack and more of a punch. And I really love doing that with sub basses because when you have an attack and a punch on it, it just makes it hit more in the mix. And it's kind of like when you play a real bass and you pluck the note and it has that attack. That's what you're doing with this synth, is like adding that little attack sound. So every time it hits, it like gives you a little bit of a punch in the chest in the sub areas of the mix. So yeah, that's just a kind of simple sub thing there. And then I add even more harmonics by putting Trash 2 on it with just a like little subtle distortion. You can't really tell that much what it's doing, but just a little bit of saturation, and then fruity fast distortion where you can tell more. And you can see here it's adding more harmonics up here, which makes the sound a lot thicker. And that's pretty much it. And so when you mix that, you just have that really low sub mixed with the Serum basses where I cut off the frequencies. They mix together to make a really thick sounding seamless bass that you can control in the mix a lot easier. So this is what they sound like together. So it's just really thick and I can control the volume of the sub really easily. I got a really wide sounding bass because I have 2 layers. There's like some distortion on them, so it makes them really gritty. And then I have this pad as well. That just kind of creates a nice, it's a simple part, but it's like, it's really thick and it's interesting. And that's all I really needed for this drop. So after all that, when you play it all together, it sounds like this.
you could just walk away, yeah, I wouldn't even have to say it. 'Cause right now I just need some space, yeah. So just walk away, just walk away.
So yeah, that's how I made the bass for Walk Away. All right, that's the tutorial. I really hope you guys enjoyed that one. My goal is to teach you guys so that you can be able to get your music to the next level. A lot of times it doesn't look like you think it does. It just takes a lot of practice of getting to know how to mix the right sounds together and having the right parts for your song, and also getting together the feel and the vibe and like the chords and structure and melody and everything that comes together to make a great song. It's not as much about the specific samples or sounds that you use as you think. It's more about just having the intuition of getting the right sounds together and creating something that will connect with a lot of people. If you guys haven't already, check out my song Walk Away. It just came out. You can stream it anywhere, whatever service you use. Add it to your playlist, show your friends. It all helps me so much. I'm so excited to have this out and I really want to see cool things happen with it. It's already on the BPM Sirius XM station, which is crazy, so it's a good start. Make sure you follow me on Instagram. We're just about to 10,000 followers. And if you're not already subscribed to this channel, dude, subscribe. It's not that hard. And that's all I got. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.